This is part 2 of a two-part series where I talk about the gaming crash from 1983. Hit the I annotation or the link in the description to go to part 1 if you haven't seen it already. Without further ado, back on the 19th of January, I made a video talking about the gaming crash from 1983, talking about how Atari would have survived in a hypothetical scenario. In this part, I'll be discussing what the outcome of Atari surviving the gaming crash and after the first console war, with Nintendo, Sega, and Atari duking it out in the first major console war of 1985. All three major console companies prepared for the next set of 18-bit consoles. The Super Nintendo Entertainment System and Genesis will still be the consoles for Sega and Nintendo for the second console war in 1991. While Atari, feeling more cocky, decides to push their hardware and software limitations to make the first 36-bit console, since Atari's 26 and 2700 helped Atari survive and become more popular and have more money as a result. The Atari Jaguar, or Atari 2800, this console is stronger on paper, but became a major flop for Atari, since their cockiness made the company rush to release the console before 1991. Instead, they released it in early 1990. The Jaguar would also lose all their third-party and a few first-party publishers to the more reliable but weaker SNES and Genesis, as game publishers were not thrilled with the early release of the Atari Jaguar. With most of their games made from weaker consoles to run on, they'll leave Atari or stop publishing on Atari's consoles. Since the disconnect between Atari and their game publishers were breaking apart, after the Atari 2700 was released, Atari was making the game publishers rush to create titles for their consoles before Nintendo and Sega got popular titles out and swayed Atari fans to jump ship. After the horrible launch of the Atari Jaguar, either Nintendo or Sega would win the 1991 console war, since Atari botched the Jaguar's launch. With Atari falling in popularity 10 years after the gaming crash in our own timeline, this altered the first two console wars from 1985 to 1995. Nintendo would still win the 1991 console war, as Sega would be in a very close second place, like in our timeline. But the 1995 console war would be similar to our own. With the console war of 1995, PlayStation would still rise and win the next two console wars from 1995 to 2000, but Atari would have saved Sega for a little bit longer, since Sega would not have decided to release the Saturn during the first E3 event in 1995. I could be wrong, seeing how Atari fell in only 4 years. Though Sega wouldn't touch Nintendo or PlayStation, since the PS1 would be more powerful than the N64 and Saturn combined. Sega, Nintendo, PlayStation, and much later Xbox will go on to compete in the 2000's first console war. Though Atari in our timeline almost killed gaming as a whole, it's not hard to see that Atari falling meant that years after the gaming crash turned from one side dominating the competition to creating a rivalry between two gaming giants, and the turn of 35 years of console wars helped shape how we perceive consoles in 2020. I am Ray, or the vaccine. Peace.